Okay, gentlemen, now we're live. And we just need to check if we're streaming correctly. Cool. So, Steve, is that your first day back in work today, or
It's
when
my
was it?
third day. It was the first day back in the actual office yesterday,
Nice.
where I was yawning probably a bit more than not through the day, trying to maintain my concentration, but we got there in the end. So, but no, we're going okay. We're going okay.
Okay, cool. For the ones who are listening to us, Steven just became a father of the fourth kid. Is that correct, or what's the number?
Sorry, yeah, it was, third child, third boy.
For a child, okay. So he returned from the paternity leave, which is really nice. Okay, I guess we can slowly start and welcome everybody who is here. So welcome on our another webinar, which is on the topic how to grow sales from 3 to 35 million. Congratulations to you. How to grow from 3 to 35 million ARR within 2 years. This is going to be about sharing the topic of our guest, who is Stephen Jenkins from Miro, who is the position is head of grow, leading sales department here in EMEA region. And once he took over the sales team and the region, he transformed the sales from incredible to incredible growth. And I'm actually looking very forward to this discussion. Nowadays, it's very much discuss whether PLG or outbound is the right strategy. And apparently, based on your result, it's like combination, which we also strongly believe. And outbound is not that. And who is here with us? It's me, Jacob, as a co-founder of SalesDoc, where we help companies to get more of the revenue from their sales team and improve the performance. And I have my co-host, Bart Omlo, who is also part of the SalesDoc, and also 3 times head of sales of software companies.
Yeah, I'm jealous at your numbers, Steve. I want to learn all about it.
Yeah, it's definitely a punchy title.
Yeah, exactly. Just, if you're able to replicate that pretty well, then everybody wants to hire you.
I'll wait for the request after the call.
Yeah, exactly.
When I speak with many CROs and a head of sales, they say if they go to their second job into the similar situation, they do that 2 times faster. So I guess your next employer will be happy about you to grow from 3 to 35 within a year. So you set up the bar quite high.
High expectations.
Cool. So guys, how's that going to look like today, and what's going to be agenda? So we're going to cover with Steve several topics. So how it was when he joined the team, how it operated, what was the sales strategy, then how he managed rapid growth. That's going to be the second discussion topic. And the third one is obviously, which is going to be also covered partly with the second one, is the transition from PLG to outbound, or how to combine these 2 channels. Along the way, feel free to ask us questions in the chat. We're 2 of us, me and Bart, who can be replying to them and bringing them up to the stage. And we'll leave the last 15 minutes just pure on Q&A between you guys who join us as attendees and Steve. Cool?
Fantastic.
So, gentlemen, let's get into. So, Steve, if you can open up the story. So what was happening in your region when you took over, and what was exactly the region, who was in the team?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, fantastic. So it was 2 years ago. I actually just celebrated my 2-year anniversary this week at Miro, so it's opportune timing. And when I joined Miro, it was initially somewhat an 800-person business, which is still an incredibly large business. To this day now, we're up and over 2,000 people, so that amount of scale of headcount is fantastic. Hard to kind of boggles the mind slightly. But when I joined the business, my initial title was commercial, so head of commercial sales, which was spanning from EMEA. So EMEA, of course, is mainland Europe, Nordics, the UK, Central and Eastern Europe, Southern Europe, and the entire continent of Africa. So within that space, it was vast, but we had 3 people at the time within that space. So mainly 2 German speakers and a UKI rep as well. When we look at the actual business over how it was operating, it was led by the geo leads at the time. So the people which were managing the entire geo, so UK, DACH, Nordics, were managing the commercial business. Now, that initially was 0 to 500 people in the business when I came in, and we managed to scale that operation out to two segmentations as well now. But ultimately, there was no defined strategy when I came in. That was my job, to come in and define what's going to be the next course of action, how to set up the team for success, given the fact of the success they'd already had. From a standing start, a couple of quarters before, they had already grown it up to 3 million. So it was already fully functioning, but it was very much done on everything coming kind of inbound at the time as well. So I came into a good situation. I'll be very, very clear about that.
Okay, understand. That's sounds really great. And by the way, this one was your first time when you took over the sales team, which was driven primarily by inbound or product-led growth. And
yes, correct. Yeah, now my previous company, Jamf, who I was there for 5 years, was very much focused on building our own pipeline. It was not organic growth when it came down to it. It was a mobile device management solution. So the PLG motion, some elements were there, so I had a good understanding for it, but nowhere near as vast as what Miro had.
Yeah. By the way, I assume everybody on the call knows Miro, but for the people that don't, can you say a little bit about, let's say, the company? What do you sell, and like what are your products, and like what's your sales?
I suppose the main point is that it's one main product at the moment, which is the visual collaboration board. Miro's been going now for 14 years. Born out of EMEA, we've got 2 main HQs, which is based out of Amsterdam, which is quite unheard of to have such a large business. Sometimes actually having a HQ out of Amsterdam, which we're proud about. 800 people based there, I think, at the moment. We're moving to a nice new office next year, which will be fantastic. And then our other head office, which is based over in Austin. So when we look at the business, every single segmentation that we have has a different kind of motion of selling. My main focus is the high velocity sales points. So anywhere now from 0 to 1,000 people in the business. And we sell primarily to the likes of early age startups within the EMEA region. So when you think about visual collaboration, it's a huge, vast amount of areas. So you're talking about selling into pretty much any business, but within their lines of business. So really focusing on likes of product, engineering, design, anything where the project workflow, we can really influence the way they kind of take anything to market or ideate, make something more visual within their workspace.
Yeah, and they get a subscription, which is based on number of users mainly, I would say. That's
correct. So you can come on board with a free user, so completely free, up to 3 boards you can maintain, and then it comes more kind of team business than enterprise level. So my sales team is primarily focused on selling the enterprise level standard. Everything up to that point is it can be bought by a credit card.
Yeah.
So that's where the PLG motion is born ultimately. So they share the link, and then it becomes a bit of a wildfire within the business.
Yeah, I understand. Okay. So you came to the organization, 3 million in revenue, or not into the organization, take over the team, 3 million revenue already in the team. So what was the average deal size at that moment? And then how did you what were the first steps you start transforming that into the outbound? Or was it actually your first thought, by the way, like to say, hey, we need to do outbound to get more of the traction?
I think I said in our initial call is that I'm massively pessimistic. So I always think the gravy train will run out. So I think with a lot of the business when I came in, I wanted to make sure that, for one, the sales team were able to have a muscle to be able to build their own pipeline at some point, because if they are to move on and certainly to move up within the organization, you have to go out and be able to find opportunities yourself. Given the fact that I suppose the average age, or the fact that this is usually the first sales role that they come into as well. So, ignorance is bliss. They don't know, so they need to be able to train. And if they think that a PLG motion is the opportunity standard for every SaaS business, but if they were to move on, they would be obviously hugely disappointed and might set themselves up for not being successful. So I think when I first looked at the PLG motion, it was really focused on, right, what else do we have to play with, and how can we accelerate that growth as well? So rather than it being passive, how can we go out and kind of attack our user base as well, which was at the time and still is vast. It's just by the point of how do you then target as well? So you mentioned a good point there, which was focused on, what was I looking at? Was it the average deal size? I looked at the whole kind of sales velocity within the business when I came in. So the company, when I came in, and still remains hybrid. So the account executives, which are currently within my team, are focused on net new logo acquisition, and they're also focused on existing customer base. So whatever they close, they get to keep, ultimately, depending on how well they close their new logos and how big their book of business becomes, because we have to work on, of course, a capacity model as well. So yeah, what I first did when I came in with the sales operations team was to evaluate, right, what's our kind of operational rhythm, what's the expectation within each rep, and then what's the requirement that they need to then go after. So we're setting ARR targets, we're setting new logo targets, as well as focusing on our expansion business as well, which comes slightly more organically. Certainly at that point, people are just scaling quickly, but then that's a different point as well, which is not everything is just net new logo within the business. It's also focused on how do we maintain and scale our customer base at the same time, which is, for one rep, that's quite a lot. But I deemed it important to keep a hybrid model on the first instance, so people can, if they lean towards more net new logo, and that tends to be their safe bet, is then train them on the expansion model as well. So within your sales career, you're able to sell in both motions as well, and be confident to do so.
Yeah, so there is actually, as I understood from you, no typical handover, because some organizations you see typically doing new sales by the sales team, customer success team takes over, and they are responsible for all the expansion. But you actually merged it together then. You actually also made the sales rep responsible for the expansion of the clients that they sold in like a year ago or 2 years ago.
Exactly. Yeah. So certainly with the way that Miro can grow in a business relatively quickly, we want to be able to give the reps an opportunity to close maybe slightly at the smaller stage, and then not get kind of nipped in the bud by the fact that they scale quickly, so they can still regain the net new ARR from that as well. So it doesn't, I think with a model, certainly in the high velocity base, is that if they've got an ARR target, the new logo rep feels entitled to hold on to the opportunity slightly longer to gain a wider ASP, where with this stage, because they own the whole process, they don't need to do that. So there's no respite when we're getting a new logo customer on board and then scaling as quickly as possible. It's more focused on actually the customer journey rather than what the sales rep wants to close.
Yeah, clear.
Understand. And this one, by the way, like, is there any moment of handover to customer success, or they remain handling the customers throughout the whole lifetime value?
So we do have a renewals team. We do have a customer success team as well. When I first joined, the customer success team was kind of holding on for dear life as we were scaling the business. And we've now got into a tiering system. So we've got a lot of our digital success. So we're working on a digital motion from anywhere up to a certain ARR point. And that goes from tiering from 100K plus customers all the way down to 30K customers as well. So each customer will get a certain level of customer success engagement, and that's more focused on the customer health as well. So we focus on the sales side to make sure that they're scaling and onboarding their users as quickly as possible. and then the customer success team work hand in hand with the account management, so with the account executive as well. So rather than just handing over, it's more of a team emphasis as well. And then we work with the renewals team coming up, because of course their motion is we need to make sure it's on-time renewal, and then everyone comes in and everyone's accountable at the same time. And that's really what's nice about the Miro motion, and certainly what we encourage is that cross-collaboration within the business. It's something that we of course sell, cross-collaboration, and to be able to collaborate correctly, but then we also really drink our own champagne internally.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay.
And if you then look at, like, because you managed to grow from 3 to 35 million ARR in 2 years. One of the things you also said, a bit shy, and I think you never have to be. You should be proud of what you achieved. Is like, hey, but there was already like some foundation that I had. But what did you now really see as key success factors? Like what made you really able to let's say tenfold the sales or even more in this case?
I think firstly it was hiring correctly. We're within a high velocity business, and certainly the way that Miro was growing, you had a lot of other companies. I'm not saying they hired incorrectly. You had the likes of Zoom going through, as well as I think Snowflake going through their sales motion as well, and hiring incredibly quickly through just not only COVID time, but then hiring correctly, and that's absolutely imperative. You hire the wrong people, naturally your sales will dwindle. You'll have people which maybe don't fit within the function, fit within the team. So firstly, it was hiring correctly at that point as well.
And
absolutely.
And tell a little bit more then what was for you correct hiring, because everybody, obviously there's the war for talent, everybody jumps on the best person, but what is your ideal, let's say, salesperson that actually can help you establish this quick growth?
Yeah, so when I first joined, we didn't have really much of an SDR team. So naturally, being within sales and being the first kind of sales motion within Miro, I would always want to hire out of the SDR pool, because that's as easy as we can get. The fact they know the business, they're obviously hungry to get the promotion. So naturally, that's where I lean into now first and foremost. And we've got a great onboarding process for the SDRs that come into the business and development path for them. But initially, when I joined, we didn't have that pool to go after. And also, when I first joined, we had 3, and I needed to get the team up to 16 in the space of about 6 months. So naturally, I had to hire, and I felt like a recruiter for the first 6 months of the business. So what did I look for initially? So something which my previous leader, which was Lucy van der Plough at Jamf, she said, look for hungry, humble, and smart. Anything else can be taught. And that's something which I've really held true since she told me 7 years ago, which is, you can have a great salesperson within the business, but they might be completely the wrong kind of value and fit for the team as well. Yeah. So, I was very concise over making sure we had the right cultural fit for the person, because what we were trying to build was really focused around being able to lean on each other, help each other, and we congratulate each other's successes, as well as that we own our losses as well, and we feel like it's a safe space to be able to, discuss that and to own it at the same point. So hungry, anyone within sales, if you have to motivate someone to pick up the phone, they're definitely in the wrong job. So someone, and hungry is in different areas. Some people are money motivated, some people are progression motivated, some people are motivated in many different ways. So making sure that you understand the motivation, and then we can actually harness that and drive that forward. Humble. I've worked in sales organizations that people quite happily puff out their own chest. They're the lone wolf, and they might be the top biller, which is fantastic for them being an individual contributor. And you might find that latter in the likes of kind of strategic account directors and that kind of boss. But within our early stages, anyone with a huge ego definitely won't fit within the business. Yeah. What we're doing is training. We're enabling, getting them up to be successful along their career as well. So of course, confidence is fantastic. But a slight hint of humility is always beneficial. So, and then
my experience with that, just sorry for interrupting, is also that I feel that when they're humble, or I would probably even rephrase it, that they need to be willing to share. If you have the best salesperson that is like a great champion, but is not willing to share his best practices, his way of working, learn the best from the younger people, then it's also not such a humble salesperson, because he's not part of the team. It's his own little show, his or her. And so I think for me that is also always really connected to that humble part. You're part of a team and you have to do it together.
Yeah, exactly. So, and that's what I mean by owning it as a team. If you win together, it feels like a team win. If you lose together, you pull together, you learn from it, because it's less, it can be less embraced by yourself. And then the final point, kind of, being smart is probably an interesting word. I'd always use kind of emotional intelligence as well. So, you can find many smart people that, again, will stare at a phone, be absolutely shocked, but you need everything else, being hungry, humble, and then smart to be able to drive that forward. So emotional intelligence is far more important for me, being able to be aware of, who they're talking to, making sure that they're aware of their surroundings, making sure that they're setting themselves up for success as well. Obviously being a certain level of intelligence is massively beneficial, but at the same time, the three really kind of confide them together.
Yep. Steve, this one I really like that you mentioned also. The hiring is very crucial, because I see it in many organizations that they don't pay attention that much to recruiting the salespeople, like who they recruit. And if you recruit the wrong team there, from 3 to 16 within 6 months. So if you had the 50% success rate or 40% success rate in recruiting the right people, then we wouldn't be here sitting, in my case, standing to discuss how to go from 3M to 35M.
Exactly.
So
I really partnered with a recruiter internally. I actually have a previous experience of being a recruiter as well, so I know how particularly hard the job is. So when they said, look, this is the team that you need to build, or this is the target that we have to build, that was just my number one focus for the first 6 months, really partnering with the recruiter, making sure that I was involved in every stage, and also offering the people themselves as well. There's nothing worse than a recruiter kind of saying, hey, we're going to offer you the job, and then the manager not being there at the time as well, because I was still being a L1 leader as well, so to report directly into me. If I'm not there to showcase how excited I am as well, that really put people over. And I also did quite a lot of headhunting myself as well.
That's perfect. And this one, I would like to go a little bit deeper. Were there any questions, any particular things you were testing the candidates on, how you validate the hungriness, how you validate the humbleness or smart, that the person is smart? If there was something like you use along the way, or
I always tagged up with people firstly, so I'll get people to ask the questions for me, and I would kind of dive in with a couple of triggering questions, which is really focused around how they kind of think on their feet a bit more. So one certainly around the kind of humbleness is, asking for, what was the most interesting feedback that you had, or what's the biggest issue that I'd have with you? It's another one that my leader used to deliver in once, which is, what's the biggest issue I'm going to have with you? See, what's going to be the issue? What are they going to come up with? I've had some really spontaneous answers from that as well, and it really kind of pulls down the walls. But I think trying to get people to open up in the interviews is first and foremost making sure they know it's a safe space, so they can really get themselves through. Again, we're working with early in career people, so naturally they can be very, very shy or intimidated at the same time. So really getting them to open up, and that's where you really find the true people as well. So the questions that we ask the same questions. It has to be the same motion. I wouldn't ever change my motion into which people I think are doing a better job at this stage or whatever. Answer the same questions, and we'll go through that kind of scoring panel, and then we'd have a panel at the end to make sure that everyone's aligned. Even up to getting a commercial account executive in quite a lot of companies, the VP wouldn't even care. My VP was wanting to be involved, wanted to know the people, and also wanted to interview as well. So it may have been slightly elongated, maybe 4 or 5 stages for a commercial. A lot of people might see that as overkill, but the people that we hired, really have progressed nicely. And that's something, a lot of the team that we've hired over the last 2 years, they've gone up into enterprise account executives as well, or been successful in enterprise and other businesses as well.
So we have a few questions from the audience, from the participants already. So
sure,
let me group 2. Like one is a bit related to the fact that you also said, Ella, it's about team and the right hiring. So in a sense, it's also about motivation. You already explained that you have the sales reps are like responsible for new business, for the upsell. Can you explain a bit about how would you do that in terms of commission models, and how would you set that up, and how do you create the right motivators for the team? So that's a bit of a combined question, and the next one I will ask is a bit about philosophy specifically.
Yeah, so the targets is aligned with our commission team first and foremost, but there's different ways that companies also line up their commission structure. So a lot of people either have a pull, this is our general target, so it's a tops down approach, everyone gets these targets to be able to attain, and even if it's maybe attainable as well. So one thing that I've noticed with Miro that we do is that we actually set the targets that can be attained as well. So a lot of I know businesses that if you over attain on 120%, you're capped. We don't do that within Miro as well. It's very much focused on if you over attain, people attaining 200, 300%, they get paid on that as well. So really, the motivation there is the fact that if you over attain, you will get paid for it as well. So having people come from previous companies where they've been capped or they closed too much. It's really unmotivated. We also do spiffs throughout the quarter as well. So specifically within my team, we run like a super fast start spiffs, but we also run multi-year multipliers as well, which we find as being really beneficial. So people come in saying, rather than think tactically, we want to think strategically. Sometimes a multi-year opportunity isn't most beneficial for the rep, because it takes longer and they only get compensation on the first year ARR. So we run on multi-year multipliers as well, which has been hugely beneficial for the team, and also helps the customer along the way as well to make sure that we're able to solidify ourselves nicely within there. But a lot of the reps are focused on obviously their paycheck, so we just make sure that firstly that the compensation, the BCR rates are set up well, and then also that the targets are attainable. And we got it wrong. It's not always been right. We got it wrong when I first joined, where we set maybe too high targets. The expectations were too high. The capacity as we were hiring wasn't right. We got given targets that needed to be shared. But we experienced good times. We experienced bad times. Now we've gone through the kind of, I'd say, the bad times which were very profitable, but now we're in a more stable position where we can definitely focus on what is the true capacity of the business as well, and people are generally attaining well.
So it was a success factor to achieve the goal also. So you saw it as a steering mechanism, or was it more like something that it was there? You need to make sure that you do it right, but it was not. It didn't make the difference from 3 to 35.
No, it didn't make a huge difference. I'll say within there is firstly it was the hiring, then building out the kind of cross-functional teams. If we go back to maybe what was the key indicators over what we did, but then building out the repeatable motion, I'll say is probably when I first joined there was no cadence, there was no operational rhythm, there was no real kind of motion within the business. Bringing that centralized, because each geo leader had a say in what that commercial rep was doing, so it was very disparate over each rep what they were mandated to do. So bringing it in being a centralized function, building out a rhythm, a drumbeat within the business. That was I'll say the key indicator for the success once we had the sales team in motion. And then making that ultimately repeatable as well. But I'm one of the, I'd say I really enjoy testing narratives as well. Just because one drumbeat works and it's working to a point, where we can always dive back into being successful is fantastic. But then I could easily have driven the business and possibly attain this number later on, but without testing any narratives as well. So we really, within the business, that goes to the leaders that report to me as well, is that they're constantly testing the narrative. They're constantly saying, right, can we do this differently? Can we do that differently? I really encourage that within the team as well. And that's that kind of safe space, nothing stupid when it comes down to it. And sometimes I much more prefer to try it rather than not try it and wonder if it would work or not. And that's where we found some of our best ideas.
Yeah, great.
Nice one. Yeah, there's a second question, Bart. Are you going with that one, or we can?
Well,
continue?
the second one is, and it could be that we'll get to it. You answered it partly. You obviously that if you create a repetitive motion or a good motion, that is really the driver to success. I hear you say that more than something like, of course, the hiring, but not necessarily how you reward them, as long as it's realistic. But another thing that is also, it's about velocity. So how can you speed up the motion to make sure that you're also able to handle the growth? So can you say something about, did you do something in those 2 years to get better control over the deals or increase the velocity of the deals?
I suppose what we did first and foremost is actually understand what the business was doing. So coming on, so I'm if anyone's that worked with me recently, is that I love dashboards. You know, our CRM system, Salesforce, is something which I dive into constantly. So firstly, it's breaking down actually what is our sales velocity and how can I showcase that to the team? Because if I'm talking about velocity to the team, I could be talking about hours about numbers, but it means absolutely nothing to them. So what we do is that we created dashboards. I've created a couple of dashboards individually for people that wanted to track themselves and keep themselves accountable. Not everyone tracks themselves always on a CRM system, so they use other devices and other applications, which I'm happy for them to use. But ultimately, it was understanding the sales motion first and foremost. How many opportunities all the way from our demand generation team? What are they mandated to do? How many are we getting through from from our marketing leads? What's then the conversion rates of every single type of lead that's coming through? When it hits an SDR, what's the conversion rate? What's the conversion rate that we want from that? And then identifying from stage 1 to close 1 as well. What's the areas that we're really focusing on? Once we're able to break this down, you can then find the sales motion and then in between each segmentations as well. So, I assume a lot of the people on the call know what sales motion and velocity is, but within a high velocity motion as well, being able to break that down, understand it as well, we'll be able to define then what you want to do next. And you can trigger a few things within the business. I've always preferred multi-year deals plus a higher ASP work. Smarter, not harder. I'd much more prefer the team to close slightly lesser new logos and really focus on slightly bigger opportunities. But then we've got 2 segmentations now as well, which one being growth, 0 to 200 people in the business, which is focused purely on velocity. So we're not focused on ASP, and the commercial business, which is focused a bit more on that kind of longevity, a bit more strategic deals.
Yeah. This one I will dive a little bit deeper again, because that's a huge change for the organization, isn't it? Right? We serve everything what comes in and chase after, and then we say we focus only on the big ones, which requires a change of the mindset and also requires different skill set of the people, because closing the deal SMB business where you have 10, 20K deal, which comes from inbound, is totally different discipline than 150K deal, which you do via outbound. So how did you manage this one?
Yeah, and it goes down to breaking out the segmentation. So if you mandate a team to hit a target, and the easiest way to hit that target is on a velocity standpoint, that's exactly what they're going to do. With salespeople, we're going to go after the low-hanging fruit. So what we did is that we highlighted and we broke out the segmentation. So firstly, we understood, right, where's the sweet spot within a higher ASP, and that worked out to be 200 employees and above. Anything above 200 employees and above demands a higher ASP by the fact of the potential users that we have within the business, as well as the trajectory that we expect them to have. You're then focusing more on then the customer life cycle. So initially within the growth team, we weren't focusing so much on the customer life cycle after. We were just focusing on net new logo acquisition, so building out that motion. But then how do we then maintain the customer within the commercial segments? So it was heavily focused on how do we mandate the team to have that activity and then make it beneficial for them to do so, and then teaching the sales motion on how to then get them to that point. So we needed to make sure that it was first affecting their pockets to be able to demand them to be able to do it, rather than just coming in and saying, you need to do this and this is what I want you to do. I'm not that kind of leader, but also, I want them to attain target in what's going to be the most beneficial way for them. So we just had to make sure that we set up the right pitch for them to be able to be successful, but then also to learn new skills along that way as well. So that's when we're focusing more on the likes of MedPick methodology, value proposition selling, and really working on those longer term engagements as well, where we're bringing you can quite easily in the lower segmentation close an opportunity single threaded. Within a company of 30 to 50 people, you could probably sell to one person. They're going to be the decision maker. They're going to be the one that's going to be able to close the opportunity. Within a business above 200 people, that's probably not going to be the case. It's probably going to be a certain criteria of who has signed off for certain areas, and also where the budget's going to be coming from. So it becomes a bit more complex as well.
Yeah. And when you because I can imagine people like to have a bit of predictability also where they go and how they need to do their things. But you also mentioned a bit earlier that you said, well, sometimes also you need a strategy a bit. You want to experiment with your messaging or with your approach. It's also one of the questions of a LinkedIn user saying okay, how did you do it then? Did you do some kind of like A/B testing in the team? Did you use one of the teams that was performing better, for example, as a bit of your experimentation area, or how did you do it and still keep the people engaged, motivated?
So so the team were already attaining a goal to a point with the PLG motion. So this gave us an opportunity, certainly me an opportunity, to dive into what other campaigns we could run. So I suppose the luxury with Miro itself is the fact that we integrate into so many different type of applications. Yeah. So we could run specific campaigns on, hey, look, you integrate with the likes of Asana, you integrate with the likes of Zoom, and have those be able and have targeted campaigns saying, hey, we can help you with regards to certain areas of your business, whatever the messaging may be, and kind of trial and test our motion just by mentioning our applications or our strategic partnerships as well. So that's where we saw one of our main indicators in my first year as well. Now we're working a bit more focused on early age startups and how we can develop into that motion. But again, I've got a sales leadership team which is very much focused on different motions, and I give them full autonomy to run that within their own segmentation, within their own geo as well. So what works well within the UK probably won't work well, particularly in the Nordics, let's say, or in DACH, assessing over the GDPR compliances as well. And also then you've got the different languages as well. So that's where we found the nuances to be different from my US counterpart, that they could throw out a campaign across all the US, and where we need to be a bit more intricate within EMEA. But it really goes down to the fact my leadership team focus on different areas over where they're seeing leading indicators, and then just diving into those users as well and into those certain industries if they're seeing that as the most beneficial way in. We've also got different levels of maturity as well over where Miro is actually being situated. So UK and DACH has been, we've been there for much longer than the likes of France and Southern Europe, let's say. So different motions, but it's repeatable as well. So we can go back 2 years ago and say, hey, this works well in the UK. Should we then try it in Southern Europe, or do we need to try this in Central and Eastern Europe? And is there a different nuance that we can develop within that space as well? Because there's no point recreating the wheel. We know something that works, so now we're in a motion where we can use that along the way. But yeah, creativity is definitely the main factor within that space.
And also the willingness to differentiate a bit.
Exactly. As I was saying, the team were attaining targets. So whatever they would get from these added campaigns was going to be the accelerators to their commission. So you tell someone, you would never go up to a struggling rep saying, hey, let's try and be more creative, let's try something completely left field. No, they need to focus on their sales motion. They need to actually get into a confident state first. So we were in a more luxury situation that I was able to test that in areas of the business that were being successful, and we had the capacity to be able to test the narrative as well. I had a great demand generation team, and also the great SDR team that wants to help us. SDRs are always willing to jump on calls and run different campaigns as well. Yeah. So it's just pulling that cross-functional team in together and making sure they're all aware of kind of the narrative, what we're trying to get towards.
Yeah, I can go on, Jacob, but
you can.
Well, then let me dive in a couple of things. One of the things that I had a chat with an investor. I think it was now a week ago or so, and one of the things that he said is for us, the challenge is to find good sales leaders that have experience with product-led growth strategies. And so he was actually asking for can I have a playbook? Yeah? I need a playbook. That was a bit of the generic question that he was asking. But I also hear you saying it's not one playbook. It's probably more I would say the umbrella that you decide to use, either outbound or product-led or a combination of both, but then you then still experiment in all these different regions. So I don't know how you look at creating one playbook for product-led growth, or how many times it needs to change, or what's your take on that?
I think every single business, if you want a playbook, that's relatively easy to make. You can make a playbook. The only point is that if you bring in a playbook to a business, and you're very rigid on defining that and making that successful, you'll probably make it relatively successful, but then is it right for the business, and is it the right sales motion? Yeah. One of the books that I loved reading was Jim Collins' Good to Great. And what Jim specifically says within the area is that if you come in with a defined motion, because a lot of great CEOs, a lot of great sales leaders come in, they're very specific. Okay, I can make this work, and this is the team. This is going to be my motion of success.
I know.
And it's very forced.
Yeah.
So he said that the best leaders come in and assess the situation. Yes, you've got the knowledge and experience, but don't be afraid to change things at the same time. So that agility, that understanding of being able to break down a business, having confidence within your team, having the right people on the bus, another comment from the book as well, and being able to be concurrently change things as they come in. So I'll never go into a business and say, hey, this is going to work, because you don't know. Every business runs in a different direction as well, and also the user cases, the different industry, the people that you're speaking, engaging with, it all differentiates as well. So I think it's a very easy thing to set up, but will it be successful? Who knows?
Yeah, and I completely agree with you, because I also think that it depends on the business, it depends on the culture, it depends on the type of client. You even mentioned that you have a model where sometimes even the client segments could change, that your product evolves also over time. So you talked a bit about collaboration with your customer success team and so on. How are you collaborating as a sales team together with your product team and with your marketing team? And because always, if you look at least the standard umbrella of product-led growth, it's always like more a company direction, where everybody in the organization has a focus that they want to do product-led growth. So not like product managers growth or so, but product-led growth. That everybody has that same perspective. How does it work in Miro? How do you collaborate?
We collaborate well. I'd say within any business that has scaled quickly, there's going to be some silos within there as well. But I think with the leadership team that we have in place, certainly our courageous leader Varun as well, who's leading our whole product side of things. He's very visible. He makes us aware over changes. We've got, I think, every month now we have Ask Me Anything with our senior leadership team as well. So they're very transparent around scenarios within the business. Naturally, I'll say naturally, within Miro, half of our business is product people, which is probably quite unheard of in a lot of SaaS businesses, where you're probably focusing 30% of the business is products, and then you've got kind of go-to-market being 70% to kind of push it out. Miro's got a very big focus on the product itself. Our product sells, and we've got over 50 million users globally, so our product needs to be fantastic. So there's a huge focus on our product, and I'd say that's probably the differentiation, is the fact that we are more customer and product led rather than selling the dream. We're very much focused on our customers coming to us. We hold consistent advisory boards as well. We take a lot of feedback from our customers, and we want to implement that. And given the fact of the army that we have behind us in Miro, we can do that at pace as well.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah. But with every company as well, you'd probably say that there's some things that happen, and you always kind of put your head to your finger and go, why is that now? And you kind of have to play catch up on occasions, but that's just by the pace of the market and paces that we're kind of scaling at.
And what would you now do if you, and then I'll give it back to you, Jacob. What would you now do? Like, Miro is a fantastic product, and it's not because you're on the call worked with it. It's great. It sells itself. That's and for some organizations, it's pretty straightforward. They have a product that sells itself. It could be that they're in the right segment. I think another great example is Figma. Is also a product that sells itself in a sense. So then you automatically create a community around it. What now if you have a product that doesn't automatically sell itself? Would you then advise to go for a bit of a different strategy, or would you say, well, then still you could, for example, use product-led growth or customer-led growth? How you say it?
That's a really interesting question. I'd say it's defining the sales motion first and foremost again. So it's going back to kind of square one. PLG firstly is more focused on the product. If you're thinking about other companies which don't sell themselves, which are hugely successful, I've mentioned Snowflake before. I think Snowflake's a wonderful business as well. That's a business with a sales cycle which is, I think, on average anywhere between a year to 2 years long. So that's really then focusing on the pitching, and that's not a product-led growth motion whatsoever. Just by the fact over the way that we've positioned the pricing, the modeling, the easeability, this just made sense for us. So I'll go back to actually the kind of grassroots of the scenario, which is where are our customers, how can we make it as easy as possible for them to buy us, and then how do we then scale from that point again. If you just hire more salespeople to push a product which may not be, the user cases and maybe the right training still hasn't been provided, then in England we say you can't polish a turd. So it's probably coming down to that point.
Cool. So guys, because we have last 15 minutes of discussion and then we jump into the questions. There are some of them waiting for us. I would like to spend those 15 minutes on PLG outbound. It's not versus outbound, it's all together. And I think we dive back a little again to the team, how it was structured. Because did you have specific salespeople that just chase after the outbound, dedicated people that went for the outbound sales, or you have it combined that they got something as an inbound and they did also the outbound in the free time?
Yeah, I suppose it was always hard to find the free time within the capacity of the team already dealing with net new logo as well as existing business. But that was exactly what we ultimately did. In the early stages, we had an SDR inbound team which we were able to leverage to help us with our outbound. But ultimately, their focus obviously got diverted, and we had to become a bit more self accountable for it as well and self-led. So every single quarter is what we do is that with our PLG motion, we've got a certain level of users within our platform that we know are probably right. It's the right time to start looking at enterprise. But I suppose one of our nuances within specifically within Miro is that people probably don't know as and when they need to make that jump. So we will divide out accounts in between individual reps and then mandate them on a quarterly basis to then target those, if that's 40 to 50 accounts as well. And the nice thing with that is that there's usually a decent pool of new businesses coming through. If we set a criteria that they need to be of a certain license count and also a certain maturity within using as well. So we won't come on and just pitch Miro Enterprise to a company which has never even heard of like PI planning or agile workflows and things like this. It would just be a bit too much for them. So we really focus initially on going into our user groups, going into our current user base within our PLG motion. What was the criteria for identifying these customers as well? So we focused on either specific industry and within the geos as well, and then defining then the messaging and going after them individually as well. And that's where we found that our velocity changed. The sales motion was slightly longer, but then the ASP was higher because as we work in sales, we know that when opportunities come to us, they tend to dictate the cost and the license count that they want. Where if we're making more direct approaches then to our customer base, because we're in the lead, we can anchor high, and then we can develop that relationship, set the expectations differently to them coming to us initially as well. And we can, I wouldn't say dictate, but we can enable them to focus on what budget there needs to be acquired through that as well. So through what was an initial change, and again, it was mandating the team to say, hey, we're not getting as much through from inbound. We've already started building out these campaigns and these motions that you're working to qualify, and then really developing them to then do it themselves. And thankfully, over the last year and a half, we've had more SDRs come up. So the SDR's job is to make these approaches initially, and then the only point which we need to then do is like, how do you close them? And that's been the great motion that's coming through within Miro, within our kind of development paths within the team.
Okay, so structure of the team was that you had SDR for inbound and outbound.
Initially, yeah. Well, it was in inverted commas they were allowed to deal with outbound until we became a bit more transparent that they were helping us, because the SDRs were, of course, targeted on attaining a certain inbound goal, which was attainable, and then, of course, they were kind of smashing their targets with the opportunities that we were helping them get. But yeah, I think that it certainly helped us get it off the ground, making sure that the motion was possible first and foremost, and then we brought it in-house to saying, hey, look, this is the messaging, this is what's working on our outsourcing, our mailing tool as well, and then really defining that as we progress forward.
Yeah, I can see one of the kids. No worries.
Sorry, of course, with 3 young boys in the house, you're naturally always going to have one interruption. Sorry about that.
No worries. I understand how difficult it is to explain to the kid, hey, just please don't enter this room for an hour.
I think there was a newscaster on there as well. There's that kind of meme that someone walks in and he doesn't even have any trousers on as well. So thankfully, I put some shorts on.
We learn as we go.
Exactly.
Yeah. Cool. Back to the structure of the team.
Yeah.
And were account executives also responsible for their self-sourced pipeline? So that you create a target list for them and say that, hey, you have to really go after these clients, these logos, which didn't have much of interaction with Miro.
Yeah, I suppose we gave them the opportunity initially to do it. I wanted it for them to see that it can be successful. So there was a few people which adopted it early, and they were very successful with attaining goals, getting opportunity, a really decent pipeline in. And the people which initially thought, no, I can still get enough inbound with my existing customer base, eventually it dwindles. If you're not closing new logo customers, and then your trajectory of your existing book does tend to plateau slightly, that's when you need to start looking out, okay, what are other people doing to be successful as well? So I knew that within the team we would have a few early adopters of the new motion, and from experience, that's going to be successful. And then as soon as people start seeing, hey, what are they doing that's different? Everyone had the same opportunity, and now everyone's really gone into that motion. And I never want people to say, hey, you have to do this. Everyone has a slightly, they either index in certain ways. Is it more account management? Is it more, new logo? But at some point you have to learn that motion as well. So yeah, it's kind of like a carrot and the stick. You show them the carrot, and eventually if they're not attaining target, you have to say that this is what you really have to develop as well. But yeah, organically it's worked really well within the business. So and again, we haven't KPI'd them significantly, just by the fact that they have adopted it. But as we look at KPIs a bit more around acceptance rates, meeting requests, and things like that. So if they're sending out 200 outreach emails and they're getting one meeting from that, then probably the messaging is wrong. So what are they doing that's maybe not right? Are they having enough calls? And that's where we focus more on the coaching as well. So we have Gong, we have outreach, where we can really review the acceptance rate, the conversions of meetings, and then we can really focus on the Gong calls and say, look, it all comes with all the different dashboards that we have, which is within the conversions, right? We see your conversion rate is fantastic up to stage 3, but then it drops off a hill. Why is that? Let's look at some calls that were currently stage 3 and then see if there's an indicative problem. But everyone is now confident across that motion.
Nice one. One side question, I guess. How do you maintain the know-how sharing in between the salespeople? Very often when we enter the organization and we start consulting and delivering workshop, usually the biggest value is that we actually put the salespeople into one room and they have opportunity to exchange what they experience on the market.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's definitely what we do. We hold ideation sessions. We hold so the geo leads hold team meetings on a weekly basis as well. We've got big deal reviews where we review either currently in pipeline, close won or close lost opportunities as well, and learn from each other. But then, yeah, I think that's the nice thing within the team, that sometimes you can put people in a room together and the loudest people will be heard as well. And I think that's I'll kind of champion Miro here as well, is that within Miro you can have an ideation session, everyone gets to say, because they're laying down stickies, they're laying down their ideas, this is what could be done differently, this is what I'm hearing as well. So you really get all input from everyone as well. So, you've got, naturally, you'll have some introverted salespeople as well, which don't tend to be heard. Majority, from my experience, they've got fantastic ideas that don't ever, rise up above the loudest people in the room. Yeah. So I think that's been really beneficial, that we, again, it's having the confidence to learn from each other, but then also to learn from the losses and what hasn't been successful, because that's, of course, how we step forward.
And is there then for you also value in on-site events these days? Because everybody is used to work remotely with great tools like Miro, for example. But do you do something with your team physically, team building type of activity? Is it important?
I think as a team get together, I think that's hugely important. As we've scaled, employee size over the last couple of years, at one point as a leader, as an L1 leader, I was managing 16 people myself, which at that point I think I was averaging something between 50 to 55 hours worth of just meetings and one-to-ones in a week. And that's where we were a lot more focused on the team being together, making sure we're going out for dinners. And then when we had the leaders put in, that's when it kind of segmented the kind of geos as well. So every single quarter, we do have an all hands. We come together for a couple of days, but then also, I think a lot of businesses made it mandatory for people to come into the business and come into the office. I've never been like that as a leader. I want to make people available, and I think certainly with after COVID, telling people to come in, they'll just push back anyway. So I made it completely clear to them, hey, if you want to come into the office, it's down to you. You know, we'll come together. You can come. I'll make some meetings mandatory that we need to come in. It's very rare that we do that. But, you know, there's some people which live particularly far away. There's some people that, you know, work a little more remotely as well. But getting the team together, for one, I really enjoy. I'm an extrovert. I get a lot of enjoyment out of being around people as well, if I haven't showcased that within this call. But at the same time, it's getting the team together and, you know, building out that kind of, I suppose, the values that we have within the business. But my team recently, they do a monthly sports activity together on a Monday. I think there's a few people which went for a 7.5K run around Amsterdam this week as well. So different ways of getting people together.
That's your way of celebrating success. You go and run.
You go and run, yeah.
Yeah, you know, they're playing paddle. They're doing, you know, it could be like balls. There's a decent place in Amsterdam called Oki where you go and do darts. So yeah, it could be loads of different things that we'll do together. But the main point is getting together, doing something different, not focusing purely on work to build out that relationship in between each other.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I think I'm getting slowly to the closing questions, so we remain those 15 minutes for the LinkedIn questions. So my last question, unless Bart, do you have something you'd like to ask for?
Yeah, well, you're the last, so can I ask one and then you do the last question, okay?
Okay, go ahead.
So well, I actually have two, Jacob, sorry. So one, that could be a very short one. So can we have this webinar again in 2 years, and then you've grown from 35 to 70 million, Steve? That was the short one.
We'll definitely see. I have to see where I'm going to be in 2 years. So.
This is the political correct answer, but I assume the opportunity is there. And the second question probably is so how do you celebrate success? So how did you celebrate it with your team? Because I believe it's super important. You obviously push the pressure on, that's like everywhere, but how do you celebrate it? If you do.
Yeah, I suppose firstly, and I with all of the people which came into the business as well as my leaders, I do like a motivational chart. So, you know, what motivates you the most to, you know, what's least motivating. Some people crave and really require that, you know, pat on the back and things like that. And I suppose going through this motion is that I identify with every single person how it's the best way to motivate them and also to congratulate them. Some people hate being shouted out on Slack, like company-wide. It makes them cringe and makes them want to fall under their desk. Some people absolutely love it, and that's the motivation. You know, that's just how we're in tune. So, firstly, it was identifying how to motivate the team on an individual basis. But I think since for me personally that I've been maybe slightly further away from the business. Obviously, I've got managers that manage the ICs. I just go up and talk to them, congratulate them, shout them out as much as possible. Obviously, I don't like put them above my head and, you know, throw them through the corridors. But you know, I think a simple tap on the back from a leader, and, you know, making other leaders aware of that as well. You know, within my peer group, I've got the VC, the CRO, the global head of sales within my remit. So I'll always go and make sure that they're aware of the ICs and the managers that are performing to a decent standard, to make sure it helps them develop their own career prospects as well. I've always had a quite big chip on my shoulder that people obviously take you know, successes of other people and make it their own. You know, if someone's done something fantastic in the team, I'll never take the credit for it. I want to make sure that people get the credit that they deserve. And if that's a shout out from the CRO, then so be it. When it comes down to it, it's making sure people feel heard, make sure people understand that they're seen as well. And I think that's a lot of thing within these businesses now, is that people don't feel seen or heard.
Yeah. I think, great answer. Thanks so much. I completely agree. it's sometimes I think we even forget it. And even when people are remote, if they're all there in the past, the organization they had this bell, terrible thing, but like in the hybrid world, it's a bit more complicated. So you have to spend extra time on it. So yeah, I completely agree. Great job.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, good job. Cool, Steven. Like the closing question, like I consider this one as a really nice journey, but definitely there were some mistakes along the way, or something you could do if you were in the same situation again. So you're entering Miro right now. Is there something? What would you do differently than you've done it in the past 2 years?
I mean, no, I was absolutely perfect.
Cool. So
that was the wrong answer. This was the problem, Steve.
No, I mean, I take all of my experiences from falling on my face. Anyone that's probably worked with me before is that sometimes I don't read the full instruction list. And I'm more excited to fall on my face than to, and that's how I kind of learn a lot of my processes. So I suppose firstly when joining Miro is that at the stage where Miro was, it's hard to say precisely what I would change because it was kind of a blur for the first 6 months. So, kind of come in as like, build this mechanism, build this machine, don't think about it, just do. Of course you do think about it, but your experience tells you, you need to look at certain areas, but we've been successful within that motion. But I think if I look at one element when I first joined Miro, so from that kind of first stage, is that we had a great onboarding for the team, and initially it was of course remote, and it remains remote as well to the standpoint, but it's more global elements. So it's like, this is what Miro is, these are our values, these are the kind of sales motions that we focus within. I think I missed a trick specifically around having individual onboardings prepared for the team. I started doing that after the first year, being a bit more precise over, hey, this is your buddy, this is what you need to learn in the first couple of weeks, because you'll have that onboarding for the overall business, but then a lot of these areas, certainly within the commercial and growth businesses, that a lot of the things aren't accountable for what we specifically do. That again, we're a hybrid business where the rest of Miro is account executive or account manager. We're the only hybrid motion as well. So there's lots of nuances and a lot of experiences that they weren't aware of. Thankfully, we have built a really successful team, and I think what's continued to be true is that the team really support each other fundamentally as well. That was true from day dot, and that's true to this day as well. When someone comes on board, you're inundated with, hey, let me help you, I can help you, please don't be shy. And I think that's what's really been the saving grace of my miss or my drop ball of that onboarding process, and not being able to control that initially. Firstly, I just need to get them on board, need the right bums on seats first and foremost. And then it was a secondary thought about people which are coming externally from other SaaS businesses. Miro's run fundamentally differently, as all other SaaS businesses are. So I think one thing I would have done is built a more robust and a bit more targeted onboarding specifically for my segmentation, and owning that a bit better.
Yep, perfect. Thank you for that. Cool. So
that's just one thing I would do. I'll do a lot different as well, honestly. But that's the one that comes front of mind.
We can do another webinar for that, right? Okay. So let's dive into some of the questions. The first one, which I have here as a highlighted one, like, how do you train a low performer salesperson, and if that happened, and how did you implement performance improvement plan?
Yeah, so I suppose specifically, and that's across different businesses as well, as identifying a low performer is firstly identifying why they're actually performing to that standard. So, and also then identifying if you've got the right targets in place. So as I said, I've worked for previous companies where the average attainment may have been 85%, but that's acceptable. That's actually wanted, and that's kind of like what they would call an attainer. So it's identifying firstly, what are the expectations? Are they the right expectations on the person? And then focusing more on the person specifically around, are they in the right space? So I suppose those are the three things that I tend to focus on, where are the targets set at the right expectations? Have they got the right capacity? Are they generally set up for success? So looking internally first before then just blaming and saying that they're definitely not performing. If it does come down to them not performing, it's identifying again I look specifically within the sales velocity motion, and within comparing with other people, it's how many deals are they, how many opportunities are they getting through top of funnel? Is that enough? Is their conversion rate good enough across their segmentation? Is their average deal size enough? Is their close rate enough? You'll always find areas within their velocity which may not be to the standard that you're expecting, then diving down into these areas. If it's skill or will, if their skill is there and it just happens to be a bad attitude, that's different. I think skill can be taught. If it turns out to be just a really bad attitude and expectation, then you're looking at different areas over how to even motivate them, or maybe agreeing that it's not the right business for them, or the right industry for them at the same time. So I think firstly it's looking inward, making sure we're doing the right things to support them, and are they targeted in the correct manner, and then identifying that, and then speaking to them, are they in the right headspace? Is it something to do externally outside of the business, and then really focusing on are they doing the right things? So I think it's a bit more of emotion rather than just focusing purely on that you're not attaining your ARR goal. I think the complexities go much lower.
Mm-hmm. There was another interesting question also. That's a bit different topic. That's about the amount of people that you needed to reach the 35 million. And the question then, was it linear? Was it more exponential? And the question probably also is like, how would it go in the future? Well, if you for example needed at 70 million, would you then need to double the team, or will it go differently?
So it has been more. It was linear in the first year, and now it's just different sales motion. So our targeting hasn't specifically changed. Could we do it with more people? I'm always under the idea, certainly as we're a private business still. I think we're looking at headcount and thinking about how can we develop our sales motion with the same capacity that we have, and how do we continue to scale. So I think that's more the focus on, rather than just putting more bums on seats. We could put more bums on seats, but then how's that going to then affect the business? Our capacity model at the moment, I think, is running smoothly. So I really want to develop the people that are there to be able to continue along their path, but at the same time, it's where do we automate certain areas which are maybe taking up more time, so they can focus more on their actual core job, because we're quite thin across the fact that we have two separate motions. They come in with a certain amount of accounts they need to engage with. Is there certain areas that we could develop and automate and digitalize? And that's been the change from the first year to the second year, which is get people in, make sure we're at current capacity, and then reviewing then the operational rhythm, the motion, where are they spending their time and how they're being most effective. When you find the business where it's humming at its most efficiency, that's of course going to be the most optimum point as well. And that's when you can evaluate if you need ultimately more people, because your total addressable market or your sales addressable market is just huge, and there's a big windfall with different opportunities. So it comes down to are the people in the team at the right capacity? Are they overworked, or is it to the point where we just need to automate more processes to make them more efficient? But
you could say that drive to 35 was a bit more linear. Obviously optimize your process, but you could say that the further you get down the line, the flatter it gets, in a sense.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, we wouldn't have been able to get 35 million with the small team that we had in the initial stages. I think there would be skeletons by the time we would get to this point and be completely burnt out. So.
Yeah. Thanks.
Cool, nice. There's one question once we're talking about sales. So what is the average deal sales cycle and deal size right now which you have? Because velocity was one of the ones which you were mentioning quite often.
Yeah, so it kind of differs across. So and that also differs across both the segmentations. So you'd probably look at the business averaging around 10K as a average deal size. So if you look at our general license costs, that averages in between around 35, but then that differs across 35 licenses, that is. But then that differs significantly between commercial, growth, enterprise, and strategic side of the business. So, but that's only one element that we tend to look at when it comes down to it, and that's changed over the last couple of years as well. And that's that more by design when it comes down to it. It's grown over the last couple of years.
Mm. And when you were talking about the targets of the salespeople, there's also one of the questions. You gave them, hey, this is your quota. Did you also give them the guidance and that you separate the quota? This is what you need from new sales. That's what you need from expansion and upsell, or it was pretty much up to them and the money was pretty much the same.
So they get one ultimate BCR on new logo, as well as ARR. So it's split 50-50. So we definitely want new logo, but where then they get the ARR from is then completely down to them. They can have a certain amount of new logos and attain their own a new logo target and not maybe sell enough to them, and then obviously miss their ARR. But the way that we review that in between net new logo and existing businesses, rather than targeting the reps themselves, I target then the leaders. So rather than putting the mandate on the ICs to added stress, sometimes it's harder to influence just one person. It's influencing the entire business, which is to build out a more repeatable business, and that's obviously my main motion, is that you want to be more focused on net new logo acquisition. So if you can attain your ARR target, or 70 to 80% of your ARR target with net new logo acquisition, and the rest with then your existing customer base, that's a really stable business. If you're focusing purely on your, let's say 70% of your existing business, that well will dry up relatively quickly. But if you're consistently building new logo acquisition into that motion, then you're going to have a decent pool of new customers that are going to scale into that and obviously assist. So I've always targeted my leaders to be much more focused on new logo acquisition, get as much within that space as possible. And whatever spiffs, whatever campaigns we need to drive to get to that point, let's do it. But yeah, I never dictated to the reps where they get their ARR. We just made it much more beneficial for them to do that, to build out that kind of repeatable and successful motion.
And when you thanks for that question. There's another question that's a bit connected to that. So because you were also changing your approach from the beginning to the end. So there's a question about like the split between enterprise versus SMB accounts, and also if you see it changing along the way. If I listen to you, it could be a growth in ACV, it could be a growth in number of clients. I think probably related to your high growth, it should be both. But can you say something about that split and how that changed?
So this is in between the two segments, correct? So in between, let's say, the growth and the commercial business. Okay. So the growth business is relatively still new. So it's still growing. Bit of an interesting way to say that. It's still scaling when it comes down to how youthful the business is. But they've got two different mandates when it comes down to it. We don't target them in the same way. The growth team has a different ARR target and logo target in comparison to the commercial business. So we also kind of tried and tested the growth business initially. So I had my counterpart in the US that tested it 6 months prior, and then again I'm a big idea around not recreating the wheel. So I took the model over there and I kind of implemented it within our nuances within EMEA, but ultimately they run very similar motions. It's just that the average deal size and the sales cycles are different, but we run very similar motions. And
can you say something about the split? Like how much is more like commercial and how much is like the more the volume business? Percentage.
You mean like general split of ARR?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It's a good question. It differs across all geos. So in general, you would say that there's probably, so you put it this way, there's more growth customers, but the ARR is more significant in commercial by the fact that we're closing more customers in growth, but the ARR is significantly higher in the commercial business. If I could be as vague as that.
I understand you don't want to share the percentages in detail, but I think everybody gets it. So faster growth, smaller deals, lesser growth in number of new clients, but obviously ARR volume is increasing. So
exactly.
Thanks so much.
Cool. Yeah. Steven, thank you very much for the time you spent with us, and also you all attendees and who came for this webinar. We're going to repeat this session, by the way, with other speakers. Again, we want to check out the playbooks, see how the success was made. And by the way, it's by the end of October, we're going to organize a physical event in Amsterdam. So
Ina was asking that one of the participants. If we're going to do
so this is. So where we get also some of the great speakers to and make a small conference about sales and SaaS. Cool, gentlemen. It was a pleasure for me to be with you here.
Likewise.
Until next time.
Super impressed, Steve, and also thanks for sharing your insights. I think there's a lot to learn from you. We don't have time 1 hour and 15 minutes to share it, but it's an impressive journey you made. So like, and really great that you wanted to share it with us today. Thanks so
I
much.
appreciate it. Again, it's not by any sense all on me. It's been really surrounded by wonderful people, which, of course, I've taken a bit more of the limelight, but, the cross-functional teams that help support the business, as well as the leadership in Miro, has been phenomenal. And then, the reps going out doing it day to day have just been, outstanding. So, without them, I wouldn't have achieved anywhere close to this as well. So, it goes more to them than to me. I'm just holding on for dear life half the time.
Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Catch you later. Ciao.
Good luck with the baby stuff, I would say.
Appreciate it. Ciao.
Yeah.
Bye.
See you well. Bye.
Okay.